What is going on? Add a little bit of power to an already existing fear and respect will follow? Let's take a look at this week's mob movie. Power, Fear, Respect, Mafia's Dark Legacy. In this series, we take an in-depth look at some of the greatest films about the Mafia ever made. We discuss how they were received by critics and fans alike upon their initial release, and how they stand up today. Does the film hold up to the test of time, or does it fall apart after all these years? We examine the characters, acting, plot, dialogue, music, and overall impact of each film, and how it has influenced not only future gangster movies, but pop culture as a whole. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about Mafia, released in 2009.
Power, Fear, Respect.
Mafia's Dark Legacy was a three-part documentary produced by the BBC. The series followed the origins, rise, and continued influence of the Italian-American Mafia, from its southern Italian roots to its infiltration of the United States. Narrated by Chaz Palminteri, who portrayed Sonny in the classic gangster film A Bronx Tale, the documentary was well received by critics. Tomatoes gave the miniseries an approval rating of 86%, with an average rating of 7.5 out of 10. The site's consensus reads, Power, Fear, Respect offers a detailed, if occasionally sensationalized look at the history of the Mafia. Metacritic gave the documentary a score of 73 out of 100 based on 9 reviews, indicating generally favorable reviews. The documentary focuses heavily on the 5 families of the Mafia that are active in the United States. It covers their history and how they were formed through interviews with historians, academics, and former members of the Mafia. One of the things that makes this documentary so good is that it does and just focus on the American side of the Mafia. It also goes into detail about its origins in Italy. As many of you know, I have a soft spot for documentaries. I love learning new things and hearing stories of events that I've only read about. And what better way to learn than from the people that were there, or experts that know everything about the subject matter? Sure, sometimes they can be a little slow or boring, but I feel like this one moved at a nice pace and was very interesting to watch. I'm actually listening to the soundtrack while writing this, which was composed by Ennio Morricone. This man is a legend when it comes to composing soundtracks for mob movies. If you've seen Cinema Paradiso, Once Upon a Time in America, The Untouchables, The Mission, The Legend of 1900, or my personal favorite, The Hateful Eight, just to name a few, you'll know exactly what I mean. His music perfectly sets the mood and tone of the film. He knows how to build suspense, add drama, and bring the emotion to whatever scene it is that he's scoring. He has even won an Oscar for his work on The Hateful Eight, and has been nominated 6 other times. This documentary is broken up into 3 parts. Part 1, The Origins. Part 2, The American Dream. And Part 3, The Last Godfather. In Part 1, we learn where the Mafia originated, how it grew, and eventually crossed the Atlantic to come to America. It explains how the government was undoing much to stop the Mafia, because they were getting paid off by them, so there really wasn't any consequence for their actions. We meet Joseph Barbera, who is a professor of criminal justice at St. John's University in New York. He is considered one of the foremost authorities on organized crime in the U.S. and has written several books on the subject. He explains how the U.S. was a perfect place for the Mafia to grow because of the corruption that existed here. The police and government officials were easily bribed, allowing the Mafia to expand and flourish. We see old black and white footage of southern Italy, where we meet Cesario, a young peasant farmer who decides he wants to move to America. Cesario is played by actor Joseph Ganiscoli, who you might recognize as Junior Soprano's bodyguard Albie from The Sopranos. While living in poverty in Italy, Cesario hears about how his cousin is making a lot of money in America selling newspapers. He gets the idea to steal a boat and cross the Atlantic to New York City. When he arrives in the U.S., he realizes that he doesn't speak the language and doesn't know anyone. He walks around looking lost until he sees a group of men talking. He didn't know it at the time, but these men were Mafia. They took Cesario under their wing, teaching him the ways of the Mafia and giving him money and resources to help get him started. When Cesario finally learns the ways of the Mafia, he becomes extremely powerful and wealthy, having a negative effect on the city he now calls home. Part 2 starts off with the famous line, "I make my money and I keep my mouth shut." This is said by Joe Massino, was a Mafia captain in the Bonanno crime family. Was the first and only Mafia member from a major crime family to cooperate against his own kind. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1994, racketeering and murder. but he was released early in 2019 due to health reasons. He passed away later that same year. Messino explains how the Mafia became such a big deal in America during the Prohibition era, because it made them so much money. It goes into detail about how they worked with Al Capone to smuggle alcohol into the country and how they made a fortune doing so. It discusses the 5 families that became prominent during this time: the Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. It covers how each family operates, what their hierarchy is, and how they work together to make sure that no other crime families try to move in on their turf. We see pictures and hear about some of the most notorious gangsters and mobsters to ever live, including Charles Lucky Luciano, Frank Castellano, Vito Genovese, Frank Thierry, Tom Gugliano, and Paul Vario. We learn about how the Mafia became so ingrained in society that even politicians and judges were being bribed to look the other way when they committed crimes. Part 3 takes us to Las Vegas to meet Michael Franzese. Franzese was once a high-ranking member of the Colombo crime family and was known for being one of the biggest money earners for the Mafia. During his time as a mobster, he made an estimated $100 million in profit. In 1986, he decided to leave the Mafia and become a government witness. He testified against his former associates, helping to put many of them away. He wrote a book called Blood and Betrayal, which was later made into a TV movie called The Last Mafioso. Franzese explains how the Mafia became so corrupt that it was tearing itself apart. There were killings and betrayals left and right. He also talks about how the Mafia was starting to lose power, because more people were against them than ever before. Law enforcement had cracked down on many of their operations, causing their profits to decline. There were several attempts on Franzese's life, and he feared for the safety of his family, so he became a rat. He says that the Mafia wasn't what it used to be, but that there were still some dangerous men out there. He gave the example of a man named Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, who was the boss of the Genovese crime family. Salerno was arrested in 1986 on racketeering charges and was sentenced to 100 years in prison. But he continued to run his organization from prison until he passed away in 2002. The documentary ends with another quote from Joseph Messino: "The Mafia is not an Italian thing, it's an American thing." Now that's a great way to end a documentary. If you haven't seen this yet, I highly recommend it. It's easy to forget that the Mafia had a huge impact on shaping America into what it is today. From the invention of unions to the creation of Las Vegas, almost everything we love about America was built on the backs of the Mafia. I'm glad that this documentary was made, so that we could learn about the history of the Mafia and how they shaped our world. So what do you think of power, fear, respect, Mafia's dark legacy? You think the documentary was well made? Did you learn anything new? And how did you feel about the narration by Chaz Palminteri? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more videos like this one, you can do so here.